Hi everybody, welcome to the third and final Connect Group discussion in our topic dollars and cents that we've been doing during July and August in parallel to our 2015-2016 Vision Builders campaign. And today's message is entitled Act Your Own Wage. And we're going to talk a little bit about debt and savings, which is a very important issue in our culture, in Western society, and even among Christians. So I know you're going to have some great discussion. I'm just going to unpack a few thoughts and then kind of leave you guys with it to talk about in the discussion questions in your Connect Group setting. So I want to start by, as I move into this, I don't want you guys to think I'm somehow the guru. I want you to know a little bit about our story, Jill's and my story, and my family's story. We have experienced firsthand significant effects of debt. When we first moved to Sydney and went to Bible college, long story, really short, we sold our house that we owned at a massive loss, went to Bible college, lost a lot of money, ended up with $50,000 plus of credit card debt, unsecured credit card debt. And we are actually still working our way out of that. And that's 15 years ago, 14 years ago, something like that. We are still working our way out of debt. And so I understand the crippling power that debt has on a person's life, and I want you to know I'm on a fellow journey with you. If you're struggling with this, please don't feel any shame. There are people to talk to. Come and see me and I'll be able to point you in the right direction towards some people and maybe in your campus that can help you, give you some resources that can help you. Talk to your Connect leader, and I'm sure that they will be gracious and understanding and being able to support you in this issue. My heart is to see you guys out of debt, see you moving forward and being blessed in all areas of your life. And I've seen God moving, even though we've still worked our way through debt. I've seen God's hand on our finances as we've step by step handed things over to Him and entrusted Him with our lives. I want to just take a moment now and show you this video, this funny video. Some of you may have seen it before, from the Saturday Night Live team in the United States that talks about debt and our attitude towards it. So watch this video and I'll see you in a sec. Well, love that video. That's actually the attitude, despite the fact we laugh at it, that so many people have towards when it comes to spending. They think, well, if I've got the money on the credit card, I've got the money there, I can spend it. And it's that whole concept of understanding that just because the bank says we can have the money doesn't mean we should spend it is really important if we're going to get ourselves out of debt. Let me just tell you some frightening statistics with regard to credit card debt. There's approximately one credit card per adult in the country in Australia. The average credit limit per card is $9,000. Average credit card limit is $9,000. Our credit card limit was like $50,000, so we just kept getting ours racked up and up and up. But the average credit card, $9,000. The average owed on each card is approximately $3,000. So there you go. So everyone has $3,000 of unsecured debt on their card. 75% of that, about $2,500, is being charged interest. So there is a lot of money being charged interest on every single month, the money that's going to the banks. What does the Bible have to say about debt? Because we wanted to anchor all of this in what the scriptures teach. They are the blueprint, if you like, for financial management. Proverbs 22:7 says, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Not rocket science, is it? If you owe money, you're their servant. And some of you have experienced the pressure of debt and people knocking on your door to get repayment. Romans 13 verse 8 says, owe no one anything except the continuing debt to love one another. So it would seem that debt is bad. Debt is not a good thing for us. Better to be the lender than the borrower. So is there such a good thing as good debt? Well, the Bible makes it clear essentially through that verse that there is not really any good debt. If you owe money, then you are ultimately a slave to them. You're a slave to the lender. But just because not all debt is good doesn't mean that some debt may not be necessary in our life. And so I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to describe a couple of different kinds of debt. Some of you, this will be common sense. Some of you may have never heard this before, and you really need to hear this. There are different kinds of debt. There are secured debt and unsecured debt. So firstly, a secured debt is a debt that you owe money that is secured against an asset that you have. So a house, for instance, is a secured debt. A car is a secured debt. So if you go to a bank to get a loan for a house or a car, generally the interest rates will be lower than an unsecured debt, which means that the bank can't come after any asset if it gets its money back. Interest rates will be higher for an unsecured debt. You want to borrow money for a holiday, that will be an unsecured debt because the bank's not going to take your holiday for you if you foreclose on your payments. So secured debt. Now a house is an appreciating asset. Generally speaking, over time houses track up. They may not track up in the short term, but over time it's an appreciating asset. It's gaining value, and some people say, well, I don't want to actually go into a mortgage because it's debt. I would say to that, it's a good attitude to have, not to want debt. But if you are renting someone else's place, then you are actually paying their mortgage for them. You're paying their debt for them. So really, you're still paying a mortgage. It's just that you're actually not getting anything for it. So given the option between renting or having a mortgage, it's generally better if you can, and I know it's not always easy, to have a mortgage, because at least then you're paying off your debt and not somebody else's debt. But that doesn't mean you automatically should overstretch yourself. Now, cars are a depreciating asset. Unlike a house which goes up over time, it'd be nice if cars did, but generally speaking, cars go down over time. So they may be a secured asset, but they're not necessarily a good debt to have, because you will generally lose money on a car. And it's best to avoid if you possibly can. Now, there are other extenuating circumstances around the older cars get, the more money they cost in terms of maintenance and all that, and that's true. But what you'd find is the amount you're servicing on a new car loan is actually more than the amount you would be paying for maintenance if you were to put that money aside in maintenance. So here's a simple little pattern, if you like, if you want to get yourself out of debt with regard to cars. Most cars last 10 years, and the average time people keep a car is about 3 years, especially those that are in the cycle of buying new cars. If you determine to keep a car for 8 to 10 years, and after you've paid off your 3 years of payment, you just keep paying off the same payments into a bank account, you will actually find that by the time your car dies, you'll actually have enough money cash to buy a late model car. So you can actually break out of that car cycle within one car's worth of life if you're really keen to do that. Now, let's talk about unsecured debt. Firstly, credit cards are unsecured debt. Get rid of them. My best suggestion is if you struggle to pay them off, better off not having them. Cut them up, unless you're super organized. We used to use frequent flyer points all the time, but we actually found that we thought it was exciting that we'd have $500 in frequent flyer points come Christmas time. We hadn't thought about the fact that we probably spent $3,000 on interest during the course of that year just to get those $500 worth of frequent flyer points to spend at Christmas. Business loans. Now, business loans can be an investment if you've got a good solid practice. It's unsecured, but if it's going to generate income, it could be good to consider that. How can we get out of debt? Firstly, pray. Pray. Let's pray. I say it again. Prayer and trusting God. The widow of Egypt, the widow in Elisha's time, she was praying. She was seeking God for a breakthrough, and God gave her breakthrough. And I've heard testimonies of people who've prayed and asked God. Secondly, you have to have a budget. You have to know what's coming in and what's going out. You need to allocate your income and your expenses and your payments, get a clear picture of that, and then you will be in a position to begin to pay off your debts. And as I said, we can have people help you with this stuff if it's necessary. Just as we close, I want to talk a little bit about savings and investment, which is the opposite of debt. Now, the Bible commends savings as wisdom throughout Scripture. Proverbs 6 and 8. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which, having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. Joseph's story as well. He stored up during a time of blessing so that when a time of famine came, he had riches. And interestingly, the world system, the world's government, the reserve banks of the world actually rely upon and understand that people don't live the Joseph principle. They don't live the ant principle. And they balance the economy based upon people's spending. But if you employ a biblical model, which actually means when you're in a time of abundance, when the nation's in a time of abundance and you've got money to spend, don't spend it. Save it at that point. And then what happens is when the economy falls apart, the price of assets and buildings and land and food and everything comes down, you can actually buy up in times of financial hardship for everybody else and save in times of provision. And it's interesting, that's the biblical principle, and it's ultimately completely counterintuitive to how the world works and how the governments understand that people spend money. Now, lastly, one last thing and then we're done. How can you make sure that you don't become greedy with your saving? There's the story of the rich man that saved, and Jesus says, hey, you can't take any of it with you. So what's the good of it when you die? But yet throughout Scripture, saving is commended. Well, it's a simple principle that I think is a good one to apply, and that is, if you want to make sure that you don't become a hoarder and become a saver for the wrong reason and become a lover of money, simple reason is, I believe, just make sure you're giving more than you're saving. So if you're in a position where you could save 10%, then make sure you're giving 11 or 12%, so that you're always keeping your generosity above and keeping your greed intact by being more generous than saving. That means saving becomes a wise thing to do rather than a greedy thing to do. Does that make sense? Anyway, that's enough for me. It's probably spoken too long. I want you guys to have some great discussion now. Looking forward to seeing you next week. All the best, and God bless.